All right. So thank you all. Welcome and thank you for joining our forum with the League of Independent Voters of Texas on school vouchers and the Defend Texas Liberty PAC. Several LIV board members are here on the line, and including right to my left here is Jeff Harper, and we hope some others will be joining us shortly. I'm Linda Curtis, and I serve on the LIV advisory board, and I'm one of the founding members. Texans are engaged in yet a third special session called by the governor, despite the remarkably steadfast rejection of school vouchers in the regular session that ended in May. And Governor Abbott is Governor Abbott's biggest problem was getting rural Republicans to sign on to his plan for vouchers, when many rural Texans made plain to their legislators that they did not support, they actually support their public schools, and they didn't want to destabilize them with vouchers. So I'm going to turn this forum over to two remarkable people here in Texas who have their credentials speaking for them, that forthrightly about Texas school public education funding, including vouchers, what this has to do today with the current state of public education, and the politics of this session coming straight out of the failure of the Texas Senate to find Attorney General Ken Paxton guilty in his impeachment trial. Might this have anything to do with a $3 million loan to the judge in that trial, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, by Ken Paxton's supporter billionaires? That's Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks of the so-called Defend Texas Liberty PAC. This is the PAC that is pushing vouchers and the governor to dance to their tune. This is the backdrop of the third special session that started on October 9th, and it's the backdrop of our session tonight with you. So let me introduce our speakers. They are Troy Reynolds, who is a 33-year veteran public educator who worked in almost every level of public education, from teacher to assistant principal, building principal, and director. He currently serves as the director of federal programs and compliance for a Texas ISD. He is the founder of Texans for Public Education, a grassroots public education advocacy group with 40,000 members. LIV member Charlotte Gilman and I, Charlotte is a retired teacher, and I hope she joins us tonight, attended the rally outside the Capitol with several thousand people on October 7th, 2 days before the session started, and they definitely made their point to the legislators. So we congratulate Troy on a job well done with those attendees. The other speaker is Andy Griffith, and a current public high school educator who has just entered into his 10th year of teaching. He's been always in rural districts, currently teaches in a school district in Northeast Texas. He runs one of the top high school debate programs in the country, and he is also a political consultant during his off hours. As such, Andy has a uniquely qualified position to tell us how badly Texans, including adults, need civic education to counterbalance the sometimes ill effects of political consultants. Andy is going to focus on what it's like to be a teacher right now and why rural school districts are worried about vouchers. By the way, as this forum goes on, please feel free to post comments and questions in the chat, and I will try to keep an eye on it. But after these two gentlemen do their presentations for about 5 to 7 minutes each, then we're going to open up, and we want to have like a robust dialogue with y'all. Okay, so that's how we're gonna do it. So Troy, you're on, and again, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Thank you for having me. So as you said, my name is Troy Reynolds. I am not representing my school district. That is background information only. I have to say that for legal reasons each time. In 2011, I was a rookie building principal. If you remember correctly, that's when they cut, I believe it was $4.2 billion of the education budget, and we ended up laying off a bunch of teachers. I was fully prepared to get rid of teachers that were not good for kids, but I was not prepared for what I was faced with, which was telling good teachers that my kids needed, that there was no place for them the next year, that they were out of a job. It broke me. And I walked around whining for a couple of years until, frankly, a couple of drinking buddies that I worked with said, Troy, get over it. Either do something about it or let it go, but stop whining about it. And so I created this little Facebook group called Texans for Public Education, basically to attract other educators to commiserate and talk about what was going on in Texas politics. We had a couple of posts go viral, and lo and behold, today we have 40,000 members. We are completely grassroots. Nobody, myself included, is paid for the work that they do in the group, which I think empowers us. I think people trust us a little more because they know we don't make money and we don't get paid for this. Our mission is to unite people of all political walks into voting for public education. The philosophy is that if public education falls, none of the rest of it matters anyway. That the nation will fall if public education falls. And so we have Republicans, we have Democrats, and everybody in between, and everybody outside those boundaries are represented in the group. And we are very strict to Texas state politics concerned with public education. We don't discuss anything else. We recognize that there are issues, for instance, on the federal level that are important, that are controlled at the federal level, and that people have a right to feel the way they feel about those issues. So we stay away from those as lightning rods. We teach people that state government really, in its purest form, is not sexy. It's about utilities, schools, prisons, roads, and the taxes to keep it all running. It's about infrastructure more than anything else. And when you maintain that focus, thus far at least, we've been able to maintain unity between these people and to get them to come together as to block vote. And there's a play on words in the hashtag that we created. I am aware that block voting does not have a K in the word. I'm also an English teacher, and I know how people try to correct you all the time, whether you're right or not. So we decided we are a block of voters blocking those who would harm public education. So we'll go ahead and use the K, and lo and behold, people don't confront me about it very often, as opposed to the other way. As far as vouchers, you asked me to speak a little bit about the history of vouchers and what's going on in Texas with this. Vouchers, contrary to how Governor Abbott tends to portray them, they're not a new idea. They first came around in the 1950s, 1960s, basically as a response to desegregation. It was an attempt to maintain separate but equal and allow these kids to not go to school with those kids, which is still, if you listen to the underlying current within this, that's what this is. There are a lot of falsehoods thrown around, like kids shouldn't be doomed to a failing school. They should be able to go to a different school if their school receives an F. Well, first of all, I would dispute the way the state rates schools in the first place and say, walk down the hallway, look in the classrooms and see what's going on. The A through F system is not accurate. But even supposing that it is, we have something called the PEG program, the Public Education Grant. Any student in this state who goes to a school that receives an F already has the ability to transfer to any public school in the state of Texas. Wow. And so that's misinformation that they're putting out there to people about, they shouldn't be left to languish. What this really is white flight, flat out. As far as the motivation behind it, it's different from person to person. There's a nationwide movement. Texas is not the only state going through this. This is a nationwide movement. Betty DeVos is a part of it, to try and basically privatize the industry. Back in 2010, Rupert Murdoch, the founder of Fox News, made the statement that public education is $1 trillion resource that no one's tapped into. Well, people were listening and they want to tap into it. They want those tax dollars for themselves. More misinformation in the program. They talk about special ed students and getting them help. Well, number one, every bill that has been proposed in every special session thus far tells special ed kids they must give up their IDEA rights in order to take the voucher. So they would have no rights. They would sign them away if they took the voucher. The other thing to understand for special ed kids is right now we have legitimate private special education schools that provide services that no, we as public schools cannot provide. We don't have the manpower or the money because it's very expensive. They work hand in hand with public schools. There's a really good one in Dallas. I wish I remembered its name right now. Explain to you how expensive they are. A day school for behavior, like the one off of the loop near Pasadena and Houston, those are over $50,000 a year per student to send a child to get the help that they need if the district can't handle their behavior. If it's a residential care facility, I know we're paying around $130,000 a year for one child for a residential facility. There is no voucher on earth that's going to get those kids that level of service, none. And what's going to end up happening for the kids that are cheaper, that don't need that level of help, well, number one, their districts, if they don't need that level of help, could have taken care of them. If they go to a private school, you're going to see fly-by-nights crank up saying, bring us your voucher, we can provide the services, because the school in Dallas I was referring to, if I remember correctly, they teach autistic kids, and it's very expensive. That one is around $20,000 a year. A fly-by-night will come in, undercut them for the voucher, not provide the level of service they provide, run them out of business, and then when they fly away, those students are going to be left without any resources in private industry out there. The school, which has already said we're unable to help this kid, we need help to help this kid, we're not going to have a resource left to help them with. So you're really looking at a huge danger to disabled kids with this. I hope people are doing their research on this stuff. Vouchers have been tried over and over again. They have not been successful. The only place they've had even marginal success is in Minneapolis, where it was applied to a relatively homogeneous population. But even there, we're seeing that the kids who took the vouchers lag behind the kids who stayed in public school. The scenario, that's the best case. It gets worse from there. You're talking about emulating systems like the state of Louisiana, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. Those are not school systems I think anyone wants to emulate if they know anything about them. But the reason we have to fight so hard, and the reason we can't compromise, is vouchers are a nuclear option. Once you go voucher, look at Louisiana now, they don't have vouchers anymore, but their school system is still broken. And everybody who can afford it goes to Catholic school because they don't want to go to the public schools, because the public schools break down so hard, you almost can't fix them. So this is a survival moment for public education in this state. Which one was it? One of our great House reps, I've got to look up, he deserves credit for this quote. You may be able to Google it, but he said, "This is my Alamo moment. I will not back down. I will not vouchers." It was one of the 24 Republicans.
It wasn't Bales.
It wasn't Bales, although I guarantee you he feels the same way. I'm wanting to say maybe Clardy, but that may not be.
It is Clardy, I'll bet. Anyway, keep going. I'll look it up.
I think Andy deserves some time too, so I'll toss it over to him for his piece.
Okay. Thank you so much, Troy. Go ahead, Andy.
I don't want to. Troy's really the star of the show tonight. I'm just a school teacher stepping in to just kind of give my perspective of what we're seeing on the ground. So like Linda said, I started teaching about 10 years ago, and I've taught almost exclusively in rural schools. And I can tell you that from the ground, teachers and administrators are scared. It's this idea of vouchers coming in and tearing up the fabric of public education in rural areas, kind of has us a little bit nervous. Especially since really I want to talk today about the unsustainable growth that we've been seeing here in Texas, with the unsustainable growth that's been coming in really across the state. We've seen just unprecedented growth, even in rural districts, of students being enrolled and not having the resources necessary to take it on. And also, I must say, like Troy, these comments are not reflective of the feelings of my school district. These are my own personal ones. The unsustainable growth has caused our class sizes to explode over the years. I currently teach 7 courses a day. My smallest class size is 33. Back about 10 years ago, it would have been maybe about 20 to 23. Housing, the availability for housing for school teachers is really starting to get to be non-existent in a lot of places. I have a lot of friends who try to take jobs in Austin and Houston, and even out here in the rural areas. When I graduated college back in 2013, a 1-bedroom apartment up here in East Texas would cost somewhere between $550 and $725. The cheapest 1-bedroom apartment in the town I live in, which is only a town of about 3,000 people, is running somewhere around the lines of $1,500. And the amount of money going into the salaries had definitely not doubled in that amount of time. In addition, in a larger city near me, population about 100,000, the housing prices have gone really in the last few years from $185,000 average up to above 300. This is costing teachers to make decisions on whether or not to leave the profession. And I can tell you on the ground, it's entering into a massive teacher shortage. We have a bus driver shortage. We have a sub shortage, and really the industry itself is starting to slip a little bit. Just this year, at a school that I'm familiar with, we've lost 5 teachers to industry jobs just because they needed to leave the profession to make ends meet. In addition to that, the cost of insurance has skyrocketed. An average family of 2 adults and 1 kid, for the teacher to have insurance is running upwards of $600 to $800 a month, and premiums sometimes even higher. And these costs just keep getting added on top of the workload for teachers. Put on that the burdens of standardized testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we all brave it, and we do it. We're not in this profession to get rich. We're not in this profession to be wealthy. We're in this profession because we love kids, and we're here to serve kids. That's currently, I think Troy lost sound there. But that's currently where we're at. On the ground, we're hopeful. We're hopeful that the state will figure this out. We're hopeful that the state will offer us, more public education funding, not less. We're hopeful that teachers will begin to see the raises that we've all desperately been looking for. We're very hopeful that we finally get to realize what this profession is and really get to be made whole, if you will, and treated like professionals. And so once again, between the unsustainable growth has caused class sizing out the window. Our buildings, we just had new buildings built with bonds. Troy might be able to correct me on this, but I believe that when you pass a bond, you can only project to so many years of growth, so many years out for growth. We just built 2 new big school buildings where I'm at. They're already at and above capacity. We're having to move teachers around and have floating teachers and starting to build the temporary buildings, et cetera. And this has caused this affects the education of these kids. It affects the work-life balance of their teachers. And more and more of us are having to take on second jobs, really just to be able to function and be able to afford the housing that's going on around here. So, but that's really my part. Just that's where we're at on the ground. We're hopeful, but then again, many are also leaving, and the teacher shortage is real.
Is that your dog in the background there?
They're outside.
I was going to say, you need to teach your dog. So anyway, we have a lot of fun with Andy's dog because his name is Andy Griffith, and one of his dogs' name is Opie. for those of you who are old enough to know about the Andy Griffith show. So anyway, I'm going to start off the questions. Thank you both for your presentations. I'm going to start off with a question for Troy and then for Andy, and then we'll open it up to the rest of you. So my question for Troy is, what is your take on where the Speaker of the House really wants to take this issue at this time, and why?
He's being very cagey right now. He, in the past, has said he was against vouchers, but recently he started signaling he might be open to a compromise. The way the Senate chamber has just smashed him lately with his reputation, I feel like he's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be an extreme either way. There's not going to be a middle ground with him, I believe. Either they've ticked him off by calling him names and saying the things they said, and he's going to buckle down and not even put it in out of committee, or he's going to break and try to give them everything that they want. He can't give them everything that they want because they're asking for universal vouchers, and they only allocated $500 million. To give you an idea of the scale of universal vouchers, when Florida passed theirs, they passed 500 million. They're much smaller than we are, and they've now hit 2 billion. They've run 4 or 5 times the amount that they allocated for universal vouchers. So Texas is much bigger. 500 million ain't going to cut it. It's not even going to be close. And they know that. So even some of the voucher proponents get really iffy about passing something if they know this isn't realistic. We can't do this. But yeah, he's being very cagey right now. There's a game of chicken going on between the two chambers right now. The House gavelled in yesterday and immediately gavelled out and won't be back until Thursday. So they keep throwing things back and forth at each other. They'll pass something real quick and leave and take a long weekend.
They must be sick and tired of being, in Austin too, because they don't get paid, diddly squat. So anyway, it's not my time to comment. Be quiet, Linda. All right. Andy, I have a 2-part question for you about the Defend Texas Liberty PAC and why Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks, Texas Scorecard, that's Michael Q. Sullivan, and Jonathan Stickland, former state rep, who are they and why are they so locked into this voucher issue? What's their peeve? Is it really education? And if so, what is it? If not, what is it?
So from my understanding, and I'm not speaking more about the PAC, but more just about Texas Scorecard, they kind of hold it beholden this idea that because Republicans have a majority, Republicans should force whatever agenda they want, essentially down the throat without any repercussions. Quinn Sullivan has actually made a call to action in a video recently to primary out a certain number of Republicans that have been holding up the voucher fight, and is pushing to finance primary opponents against those who are pro-public education, amongst other things. A lot of this comes down to the fact that Republicans won't basically, as I say, employ the nuclear option of kicking Democrats off committee chairmanships in the Texas House, which is something that's enshrined into the system, that a minority party gets chairmanships on certain committees. So it appears to me that they are currently trying to push, very, very hard to do kind of a hostile takeover of the Republican Party here in Texas. You have Reynolds, who's currently in a civil war, really against young Republicans and a few of the different Republican groups. Troy just posted something in the chat. The young Republicans actually de-affiliated with the Republican Party of Texas a few weeks ago due to a conflict between one of their former leaders and Michael Quinn Sullivan. And that's currently, what's going on. In addition to that, Quinn Sullivan has been sending out investigative reporters to different school districts to try to kind of blow up stories as being bigger than they are, to try to essentially gaslight the public into being pro-voucher. Trying to paint teachers as being indoctrinators, et cetera. I'm not going to go too much detail into that, but it all started with the bathroom bills and the idea that and the trans students, and now it's moved on to other things as well. The book bannings, the discussions on biology, et cetera. And it's moved only further from there. It's almost, it has an element of kind of Christian nationalism to it. But I don't want to, as a Christian, I'm not disparaging Christianity. I'm just saying that the element of this is very Christian nationalist and kind of forcing it on public education. And I'm sure Troy probably has more to say about this.
Yeah, Troy, we'll toss it back.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Linda.
Go ahead.
I just want to agree with what Andy just said and affirm him. I'm a Christian also. I absolutely believe Christ is my Savior. But that doesn't make Christian national. Okay, that is not gospel. Nationalism, Christian nationalism is not something taught by the Bible. And in fact, I think if it is taught in the Bible, it warns us as Christians about antichrists, people who pretend to be Christian, but they're not pushing a Christian agenda. I think that's exactly what this is. We've begun referring to them as the American Taliban because there are big similarities between how the Taliban is to Islam and what Christian nationalism is to Christianity.
Yeah, that's helpful. Did everybody see the tweet in the chat? This is Michael Q. Sullivan. This is very educational. He says, a reminder that, quote, public education, unquote, is a babysitting service offered at the convenience of the government employees. Public education in Texas is about employing otherwise unemployable adults, not educating kids. This is the toxicity that these people are putting out. Okay, not my time to talk. Let's open this up for other people. And welcome Renee Roosh and Debbie Russell, board member of the League of Independent Voters. So if y'all want to just raise your hand or use the hand in the available to you. Anybody? Come on now. I know you have questions or comments.
I'll say something.
Come up here, Jeff.
Yeah.
Move up.
Troy, I noticed that you pointed out about Louisiana public schools, and I attended Louisiana public schools. Of course, it's been a while back, and as people would talk about their high school experiences, I would listen, and I would be thinking to myself, that is so different than what I experienced. And I wasn't a model student by any means, but had I been a model student, there were good teachers, don't get me wrong, but it was so bad. It was unbelievably bad. And I learned later that I think 5 years after I left, the school almost closed down because parents were not wanting to send their kids there. How would you illustrate the steps at which it went down and what efforts have been made to revive it?
Well, my experience with that is third hand, hearing stories of teachers that honestly we've recruited from Louisiana and hired, because you're right, there are a lot of good teachers in Louisiana. I would even posit that if they're still teaching in Louisiana, while there may be some bad apples like there are in every barrel, the majority of them love their kids and want what's best for them to teach in that system. But I have to suspect it followed the same pattern as here. We need choice. The schools are failing. We don't like what's going on. Then they started to privatize. Prisons have gone through the same thing. The prison privatization has been a fiasco as well. I think public education is a bigger one, but privatization of governmental entities doesn't work. You have a government for a reason.
Indeed. There's an interesting comment here from Joni Groom. She says, I feel for Dave Phelan. I'm hoping he will take the high road, but he is up against some big time arrogant SOBs. They did the same thing to Strauss.
Yes, they did. Joe Strauss was one heck of a speaker, maybe the best one of my lifetime. And he just couldn't take it anymore. I personally sat down with him, tried to talk him into staying. And he was just done. He said, I've got a family, I've got a life. I'm not doing this anymore. The rurals are being pushed. Take a look at the format that you've got running right now in the special session, which, by the way, I would challenge that a special session for this is even constitutional, because if you look at the Texas Constitution, what it outlines for a special session is a statewide emergency. Somehow I don't feel like vouchers that were already voted down in the regular session constitute a statewide emergency. But yeah, thank you. Sorry, I got lost because I was reading a comment there. The rural Republicans are being faced with, if you notice, the governor did not put on the priorities teacher pay, school safety money, and all of that, even though Senate Bill 2, which is in there right now, which is a standalone, separate and apart from Senate Bill 1, which is the vouchers, has a small teacher stipend, not a pay raise, it's a 2-year stipend. It has a small increase for the foundation of $75 per student. And most importantly, it has safety money in it. Well, for that, even if they pass Senate Bill 2, and I think the rurals will, because that's how he's blackmailing them, is you can't, in a rural county, vote against the teacher pay raise and survive when the school is the largest employer in your district. Okay, that's the game. I think you'll see Senate Bill 2 pass, and then it will only become law if vouchers pass, because the reason the governor left it out of the priorities is it can't become law from a special session unless he placed it in the priority. So he's waiting to amend to see if his vouchers pass. And I think you're seeing a game of chicken. I think they're going to pass 2 and vote down 1, send Senate Bill to him and see if he'll go ahead and amend his priorities and pass it, or if he's going to take the responsibility of what is essentially a veto of a teacher pay raise, of a raise in school foundation money, and of safety money for the schools. I would point out, take a look at what he's doing. I was taught, my dad taught me, don't listen to who people say they are, watch and let them show you. Look at what he's done. Forget about everything Abbott said. He has put safety money into a blackmail position and will not pass it unless he gets his vouchers. Our children are not worth protecting unless he gets his way. He is showing us who he is.
Well, can you explain? I'm looking for hands. If anybody does want to speak, you can just unmute and try to jump in here. Can you explain to us again that teacher raise? What kind of raise are we looking at? It's a stipend? Is it a pittance? I mean, what is it?
It's only for the biennium. It is set up where it can be renewed beyond the biennium, but it has no fiscal mechanism beyond that. They would have to give it one. Andy, do you remember how much it is? I don't remember how much. Isn't it 10,000 for rural districts and 3,000 for city districts?
Yes, it's 10,000 if you have a set of students under a certain number, and 5,000 for the others. So, yeah, it's based on student population size.
So see, and he's blackmailing those rural districts. That how do I pass up a $10,000 a year, even if it's only for 2 years, raise for my teachers in an area that can't pay as much as these cities?
Wow. All right, so I'm just looking in the chat to make sure that we've covered some issues that you've raised. Sandra had an interesting comment. Public schools in Southeast Wisconsin and Northern Chicago were horrible. I retired and brought my daughter back to Texas. Much, much better public schools. Taylor, Texas public schools are the best. That's really interesting.
Well, and you know, in the industry, Texas is known as a leader in education. I don't always agree with what we lead with. I mean, the No Child Left Behind came from emulating the Texas system. But yeah, we generally lead the way. And so that's another thing where Governor Abbott is showing us who he is. He wants us to follow other states and try failed ideas that they've already proven don't work, instead of us creating our own system, doing what's best for our kids, fixing the problems that we do have, Nobody denies that public education doesn't have warts. Okay, but nobody will sit down with us at a table and work out a way to fix them. Instead, they want vouchers and run away from them.
I think the most, what were you gonna say?
I
something?
was just gonna say, Mike Collier was very outspoken in favor of public education. Has he been involved in the latest movement or y'all's organization any?
Not recently. Mike and I have been out of touch for a while now. I need to get back in touch with him because I do consider him a friend. Mike and I spoke at a lot of the same events, got to know each other. He is a really good guy, and he's the only politician I've ever seen who would give specific numbers. Not only here's how much money we want to add into the system, but here's where the money would come from.
Mm-hmm.
He had a real plan, and he did. So many of them pat us on top of the head and go, teachers deserve more money. Really? Okay. There are a lot of us. Where's that coming from? There's 1.2 million people in the TRS system. How are you going to pay that many people? I need real answers. I don't need a pat on the head. I think Sandra had a question. She was raising her hand a second ago.
Yeah, I was going to add to when my daughter was born here in Texas. And so the company I worked for allowed me to have a job transfer to go to work for corporate up by North Chicago. And, you know, when we left here, she was having seizures, and we found it was because of the allergies. She was too allergic to Central Texas. But when we got up there, she was having seizures. I had her in private school, and they were doing the, oh, no, we don't take care of this. We don't take care of this. But she passed the test. She entered private school. So we put her in public school. I had her had her over there in Beach Park, Illinois, which is northern part of Chicago. They were like, well, we don't have the teacher skilled to help her. And then they tried to blame it on the education system in Texas. And then I went and moved to the southern part of Wisconsin, southern east. And so I'm over there, and the schools are like, oh, no, she's got other medical problems. So thank God I had a company I worked for. I retired from Abbott Laboratories. Thank God they were a self-insured medical company. And I got to take her to a pediatric neuropsychologist. Who can afford that? I could, thank the Lord, I had that privilege. And they discovered that she was just overwhelmed by how she was being taught. And it turned out that I ended up taking her to a psychologist for a while. And he's like, get her out of here. She is just having these behaviors because it worked the first time to get your attention, and now it's working again. I brought her back to Texas. I was homeschooling her in between, trying to catch her up. Taylor allowed me to homeschool concurrent with school to get her back up to where she needed to be academically. And the books that the doctors, you know, we're talking professional neuropsychologists, were giving me reading material to how to better teach my child. I was implementing those good theories, and Taylor allowed me to do that as well. So by the time she graduated high school here in 2015, she was no longer considered special ed. She was no longer considered having any kind of learning issue whatsoever. So thank God that I brought her back to Texas, because Texas is the place that will do stuff. And now that Samsung's here, I hate to say this, but I think part of the political problem in capital Austin is they're all trying to cater to Samsung. I think that's part of the whole voucher situation, because you're going to have people coming in from all over the world with their expertise in their field, and it's all about making money for Samsung. So if they have these vouchers, then you have all these people coming in feeling a lot more secure, because there you're thinking, well, Texas is low on the academic scale. Not necessarily. They're low if you do not choose to be involved with your child. If you're involved with your child and you are willing to roll up your sleeves and be part of the school system, you will find the teachers and principals will roll out the red carpet and try to assist you to find the best way to teach your child. It's not a situation of where the child has to learn to be taught from the teacher. Texas will take the time to find a way that the child can learn, whether it's hands-on learning, visual learning, shadow learning, whatever the case may be. Texas is willing to do that.
Thank you, Sandra. Anybody have a comment off of anything that Sandra raised here? I know Joni was a special ed teacher, not to put you on the spot, but feel free to put something in the chat if you don't want to go on camera. Troy or Andy, any comments?
I want to clarify something that she said. I do agree with it about it being a problem with basically technology in general in the classroom. Now, technology is a good tool, make no mistake. It can help us. But what we're faced with these days, I think you have two separate problems. I think you have the vouchers on one side, and then you have a commissioner, Mike Morath, who has never taught a day in his life, who is an IT person and who sells software. And I can't prove, my personal opinion is he's taking kickback somewhere. I have nothing to evidence that, but personal opinion. But I can tell you what they do to the districts. They keep cutting our money and cutting our money. And then he has meetings every Thursday. I'm high enough ranking. I sit in those meetings with my superintendent. And they'll come out and say, for example, Amplify. We're going to provide Amplify for free for the next 2 years. You don't have to take it. You can spend your money and buy a different system if you want to, but we're going to provide this statewide for free. Well, when you've taken someone's food and then you dangle a bread crust in front of them, they're probably going to jump for it, you know? And that's how they get us on all of this. Do we need to be using technology? Yes, these kids are going to walk into a job market where they have to be able to use technology. We are irresponsible if we're not training them for the job market. Do we need them learning everything through technology? Absolutely not. If a student could learn what they need to know without a teacher, you could hand them a book and be done with it. You know, that's all technology is. It's a fancy book. It's an interactive book. Do we need books to teach with? Sure. But that doesn't teach the kid. That teacher in that classroom does.
Andy, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and piggyback on that. So recently we've been seeing, so we've adopted, like many schools after COVID, we've adopted a Canvas classroom where everything is done, turned in online, to try to minimize paper usage, et cetera. And in the process, we've also reached a point where AI is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger problem. AI is an amazing tool. Our kids are going to be entering into a world of AI. But the number of students that are utilizing it to write their papers for them, to submit, basically Chat GPT generated systems. The thing about a machine learning system is that every time you develop a tool that can tell whether or not something was AI generated, the tool learns from that. And then the tool learns how to make it so it doesn't appear on the filter. And so it's constantly this battle in AI between basically academic catching academic dishonesty, and then the AI itself rewriting itself to beat the AI academic dishonesty filters. So this is something that we're dealing with right now. Troy, have you heard anything on that?
Yeah, but I'm gonna, I'm saying this to be funny, but I'm also serious. You young teachers are gonna have to learn from us old people, that's why we had them doing presentations. If you can't talk about what you just wrote about, you didn't write it. There are tricks that the older generation has, because we didn't have what's the program that you just put the paper in and it'll tell you if it's plagiarized.
Yeah,
turn
it in.
Yeah, the old will be new again.
Yeah, we're adopting more of a project-based learning approach as you speak, just as we manage to help manage some of that. But there is a massive reliance upon technology by this generation. And by the school districts, especially in the rural districts, now that we finally are starting to get up and running with high-speed internet that's actually reliable. That's been something that's been very slow to roll out. A lot of your, deep east and out west school districts that didn't have a good, reliable network. So Currently that's what's being implemented. We're dealing with, every generation is going to have its troubles when it comes to technology moving forward. And like Troy said, we're trying to, dig back in look at the old ways and see ways that we can help facilitate learning in the future.
All right, so we're going to try to wrap up here. I'm looking at all of y'all. Anybody have any more questions or comments?
Yeah, I do.
Not you.
Yeah, I know, but I know, and
Go ahead.
Andy, y'all probably hear this all the time. But there are two big things: having calculators in math class when you're trying to learn times tables, and then the cursive writing. I was shocked when I heard about those things haven't changed, and because it would have been unthinkable in my math class. Thank goodness I had a teacher that just drilled us on times tables. And then,
What's your question though?
well, my question is, given the technology, I would think in some cases it's a hindrance. And and of course students want to be mischievous and get by. There's that. But it's not the same process as we all know of learning versus sitting down and writing something out and having to bring it all together.
So what's the question?
Well, I don't know. Just I guess, has it been an effort to keep some technology out of the classroom? And I'll tell you what happened at my college. I'll make it quick. It's made me furious. I thought, you got to be kidding. I was trying to look up a word, and I went to the end cap of the library books where they typically have dictionary station. And I didn't see the dictionary. I had used it countless times over the years. So I went to the desk. I said, where are the dictionaries? And they said, well, you got to log into the computer. I thought, you got to be kidding. And the librarian got it. She looked at me like, I get it. It's stupid. But that's what we're doing now.
Yeah,
So
I think technology can get in the way if the teacher's not responsible. I do want to say one thing though: the whole cursive thing is a Facebook meme that, at least in Texas, is untrue. I can't speak for the other 49 states, but go look at the TEKS online at TEA. Cursive is in the TEKS for 3rd grade. If a school is not teaching cursive, they are not following the law, because the law says we teach it in the 3rd grade.
Well, that's a good clarification. Andy, did you have a comment on any of this? You don't have
Not necessarily, but yeah, most of my debate students, they all can read cursive and write cursive just fine. It's not, of course, as drilled as it used to be, and of course we'd all like the penmanship to be better, but God knows my penmanship is that of a doctor. So, as far as the cursive thing, yeah, that's still being taught. As far as times tables, that would be in elementary and junior high. Which I can't really speak to, but I'm sure they're still doing it. Texas hasn't abandoned those things. And as far as technology use goes, there has been a significant move to turn libraries really into media centers, is what we call them now, at least where I'm at, where we're utilizing more and more digital media. But that's both efficient, and it's teaching kids how to utilize today's tools. So
that is Opie, right? All right, so I'm going to read Joni's comment here. I do believe immigration issues will continue to create problems for our underfunded public schools. Our district in Bastrop is 70% disadvantaged, and ESL population keeps increasing. So that's a intense comment there, guys. I would like to go ahead and
civics, you got to ask.
What about civics class? Oh, Sandra put in civics class. What about it?
We need more of it. It might help with the whole political environment.
Okay, I'm really glad you raised this. So Andy and I and other people are talking about this, that this really should be a major role of the League of Independent Voters, because it's not just kids who need real civics education, it's adults. And there are funds around to employ some programs by certain nonprofits. I'm not sure if it's, I won't go into all that, but just note that of anything that we are supposed to do, I believe that's what the League of Independent Voters is supposed to be doing, is civics education. So tonight's event was part of kind of experimenting with an issue that we hadn't really been involved in on vouchers and education. And this discussion will go on. What we do with tonight's tape is, I'm going to go off camera now. Let me just turn off the video here.